Hey everybody, Rob from Karma Comic Chameleon coming at you with another Ask Reddit thread. Anesthesiologist, what are the best things people have said under the gas? Let's jump right in. I am not an anesthesiologist, but as a 13-year-old tonsillectomy patient, the 1-ounce cocktail I drank prior to anesthesiology didn't quite knock me out. A few surgical residents wheeled me into the theater before the surgeon and anesthesiologist arrived. One said to the other, "His eyes just opened, what do we do?" Another one chimed in, "Talk to him." The third, not sure what to say, opened the kit and said, "Here's the blade we'll be making the incision with." I broke my hand tumbling once and had to get surgery. He goes to put the mask on my face and says, "This is oxygen." I cough as the mask goes on. He pulls the mask away and I said, "I trusted you, you lying f***." That's the last thing I remember. Not an anesthesiologist, but when I went in for my gallbladder surgery, the nurse was an old coworker and I blurted out on the table, "I knew you'd see me naked," before I was out. When I was 9 and having jaw surgery, the surgeon was putting me under and said, "Say bye to your mommy," and apparently 9-year-old me thought that meant they were going to kill me. My mother says I gave her a look of absolute terror and then passed out. Nurse anesthetist here. When I was in school, I was getting ready to get a lady off to sleep and going through my regular spiel. I had the mask on her face and I said nice big breaths as I pushed propofol. Right before she went out, she said, "Thanks, I just had them done." I looked at my preceptor, we looked at the circulator, and we all burst out laughing. I now say slow, deep breaths instead. I love telling that story. That lady made all our days. Kind of a reverse story, going under to get my appendix removed. They begin doing the countdown as they inject a heavy dose of propofol and fentanyl to put me out. I count down to 1 and then ask, "Now what?" The surgeon looks at me and says, "You're still awake? Man, you are fat, you know that?" I said, "You're just saying that because you think I won't remember." He said, "Exactly. That's the last thing I remember." My husband went under last year, and once he woke up, by all appearances he was sober as a church mouse. Walking, asking serious questions of the doctor, apparently no issues at all. He remembered the procedure and described it to me in detail. I figured he just never went completely under. He was craving Chinese food and nothing would do except for buffet, so we headed down and loaded up our first load of plates. Evidently, he actually woke up from the anesthesia at the buffet. As far as he remembers, he was put under and woke up in front of a plate of chicken teriyaki on a stick. I had to go under for ear surgery once. I thought it'd be funny if I asked, "Does anyone need anything while I'm out?" right before I went under. I remember it kicking in way quicker than I thought it would, so I had to take my chance while I still had it. I yelled it, but got a very confused look from everyone standing around me. Took a minute for me to realize I had accidentally yelled it while I was waking up from surgery. Oops. When I got put under for a colonoscopy, I didn't really fall asleep during the countdown. I just looked at the nurse a bit confused and said, I don't notice anything." And she smiled and squeezed my wrist and said, "Just give it a moment." As soon as she said that, I started fading out, and according to her, the last thing I mumbled was, "Oh, that's f***ed, you magic witch." I was about to be put under for a colonoscopy while the nurse was trying to position me in a way to make it easiest for them to work. I had my knees to my chest and was passing out from the gas when I asked the nurse to paint me like one of her French girls, then passed out. Still makes me cringe. I had a patient coming out of anesthesia who opened his eyes as I was switching him from a mask to nasal cannula, telling me this hospital has the most beautiful women I've ever seen. Made me blush, I was so flattered, and made the rest of my day awkward with my coworkers teasing me about it. Whoever you are, sleepy man, I simultaneously thank you and hate you. 2 of my fave, both patients coming out of anesthesia. "Am I in hell?" I responded, "No, you're not, you're just in recovery." "That sounds like something the devil would say, count backwards from 100 to prove it." Or the one who stroked my unshaven arm while I was trying to keep him from pulling at his IV and muttered, "You'd make such a great carpet." When I was about to go out for surgery, they were strapping me down and told me it was so that I didn't fall off the table. My last words were, "It's okay, 5-second rule." I had a patient start a joke before surgery and finish it when they woke up without prompting. My wife is an anesthesiologist, and her best line from a patient is, "This is better than meth." In high school, I had a reconstructive surgery on my knee as I tore my ACL and meniscus in a sports injury. After the surgery, I woke up in post-op, which was a fairly large room with probably 6 to 7 other patients in beds waiting to become conscious again. I was lying there all groggy and confused when 2 nurses walked over pushing one of those carts with a computer on it. They stood over me and were typing into the computer when one nurse said to the other in a sort of frantic whisper, "We've got to plug this thing in or this one is going to die." Naturally, semi-conscious me thought that the thing was me, and I started to incoherently yell for the nurses to unplug whatever they needed to in order to find an outlet to keep me alive. Turns out, it was the battery on the laptop that was going to die. Apparently, the death rate for an ACL repair is pretty low. Not an anesthesiologist, but when I was in the wear-off room after my wisdom teeth removal, I started talking about dark doors and mind bees that were tearing me apart from the inside. I recall nothing. When I came out of surgery at 14, I told everyone I was fine and just felt like a Gatorade. Mom got it for me, opened the lid and handed it over. I took it and maintaining direct eye contact with her, I tipped it upside down, nowhere near my mouth. Got Gatorade all over me and was super confused. That's where my memory ends. Mom tells me, after looking briefly confused, I just shrugged and settled back down to fall asleep. I was given a relaxer prior to colonoscopy and was rolled into the room. Doctor asked me what I had done the weekend. I said I went to the Minnesota State Fair. "Oh," she says, "eat anything interesting?" I said, "Why don't you tell me?" No laughter, whatever in the room. And then I was out. I swear she gave an extra shove because I half woke up during the procedure and remember groaning. Not an anesthesiologist, but my husband kept telling the medical staff after his procedure that, "It's okay, my wife's a doctor. She knows what you're talking about." I'm a lawyer. During my wisdom teeth surgery, they were playing music and Billie Jean comes on. I said, "Glad Michael Jackson could join us," and that was the last thing I remember. Backstory: I have epilepsy and a vagal nerve stimulator to control the seizures. It works wonders, from 3 to 4 seizures a week to almost none in a year. I went in for the replacement of my device. Going under, I looked at my mother and started laughing hysterically. She asked what was funny. I said she had horns. And as I was coming out of all the drugs, the nurse was kind of a jackass to me, so I said, "Oh man, next time I puke, I'm gonna puke on you." I did. He said, "Man, your aim is good. I'm not even mad at you." I went under for a nasal canal surgery, and apparently after the surgery, I was holding the nurse's hand and repeating, "I love you, don't leave me," over and over. Not anesthesia, but patient was heavily sedated in ICU. Nurse gave an enema, half-conscious response, "Honey, you know I don't like it that way." After getting my wisdom teeth removed, I looked at my mother-in-law and said, "How did you get on my rocket ship?" I'm an anesthesiologist. I was recently taking care of a 17-year-old kid, and he looks at me and says, "Dude, I'm high as f***." They almost never remember it afterwards. I was coming out of general anesthesia after a surgery to repair a broken leg. I woke up in my room with about a dozen very caring, kind friends and relatives who had all come to see that I was okay. I looked around, saw everyone giving shits about me, said "F this" loudly and very clearly, and went right back to sleep. My friends thought it was hilarious. My mom was mortified. Anesthesiologist here. I was once transporting a patient to the ICU after surgery, in which he got some ketamine, and he was rocking out the entire way there with his air guitar. I had surgery last year. and when waking up, they had a communal room where around 7 to 8 people would all be waking up at the same time before being sent to individual rooms for some reason. I remember waking up slowly and hearing someone else being asked if they wanted some water. For some reason, this really excited me. Like, there was nothing more in the entire world I wanted than to be asked if I wanted water. I practically yelled, or as much as I could yell in that state, "Hey, ask me if I want water." And I'm pretty sure it came out in a "let me speak to your manager" tone, but I was just so excited about the water. My anesthesiologist tried to calm me down with a joke when I was a little kid being put under. My mom later told me about how I apparently commented on the joke being not at all funny and how I hoped he was more talented as a doctor. Patient woke up halfway through a colonoscopy and asked the gastroenterologist if he'd removed the arse goblin yet. Not an anesthesiologist, but my tight-laced, extremely Christian great-grandmother apparently asked, "Who the fuck is that ugly son of a bitch?" while she was waking up from a surgery. The person she was referring to, her preacher who stopped by to check up on her. She never lived that one down. The story was even told at her funeral. She was kinda strict, but she was a great lady with a great sense of humor. Not an anesthesiologist, but was a tech. Had a patient wake up violently. When he came to, he said, "Sorry, I thought I was a shark." I've been put out a number of times, but don't have any stories of saying anything interesting that I could have added to this thread. My wife, on the other hand, doesn't need any kind of anesthesia to say some of the most interesting things. Like when we're in the car and she's singing along to the music going, "I can't get no fat dissection," and then the look on her face just said it all. Also, ask her about how she heard people over talking and about the pill dickle chips. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comic Chameleon saying thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, and share the video with your friends, and I'll be hiding somewhere from my wife for the next couple of days. Bye-bye!